For that singing start for my presentation today. So we're
I saw
here on.
the video of your presentation. I said, "Oh, that's very good music."
Was it? I'm not sure. I might have been. I have no idea. But thanks for that start. So we're here today, day 3 of our live sessions, and there's 10 of us on the call, but hopefully more can watch on Facebook and more might join later on. So we're now in Cambodia. We've sort of had a week of other parts of the world. A lot of you are quite familiar with this project, so I might get a chance to kind of zip through a few of them. But an introduction to Green Shoots, those of you who don't know, so we're a small UK registered charity. We focus on sustainable development by looking at holistic programs that combine economic development, food and agriculture, and education and medical aid. So this today's day focuses on Cambodia is primarily food and agriculture with education. And we take you on a journey of sort of the last 10 years where we designed our work, we piloted it, and then where are we now? And we work with local partners. We've sort of introduced them throughout the week, and we'll see more from them today. And so, yeah, the food and agriculture. So our vision for this initiative, which sort of in design between 2010 and 12, really figuring out how it is that we want to work in the countries or the kind of impact that we want to make. And one of the key things was working in rural economies, making sure that, young people, particularly growing up in these areas, what are the opportunities for them? And how can we make sure that they have business skills and sort of develop their role within the rural area, not really move out. So rural exodus is a key portion of our work. And so the locations that we have for FASE are, sorry, the chat thinking. Yeah, so the locations that we work a little bit in the Philippines with our partner, Dawat Kalinga, but mostly we worked in Cambodia and worked in Cambodia with partners CEDAW and Enfant Kong, both locally based organizations, and some of them specifically to the provinces we work in. And then we also have a little bit of work with Anjali House that was introduced yesterday. So the context of FASE, while yes, we want to work in rural areas, we want to look at migration, but we also really want to look at the environment and the impact that certain practices can have on the environment and how do we improve that? Because the rural areas can only provide to these families, these people, if it is sustained, if it is regenerated, if it is something that can give back to them. And then so looking at techniques that are better for the environment and not, relying on fertilizers, which is a big problem in Cambodia. The Environmental Justice Foundation notices that nearly 60% of fertilizers being used are unnecessary. They're just too high. People might not really have the ability to understand labels and how much to use. So looking at practice, and Cambodia, as a lot of you might know, historically, it's in the recent history has faced a lot of political unrest and genocide and movement of people, which has led to maybe people that were traditionally not farmers suddenly becoming farmers and not really knowing a lot of the practices that can lead to better growing skills. So where do we operate? So Cambodia, as I just mentioned, but let's go a bit deeper. It's a population of 15 million. 68% of the population is under 30 years old. And that's really the people that we want to work for. They're the ones that are going to be taking on the country in the future and the development and sustaining it. 70% of the force is engaged in agriculture, but it still has a very small contribution towards the GDP. Most people engaged in agriculture are growing for themselves. They're just growing enough to be able to eat themselves, perhaps, or mostly growing rice and vegetables or fish or things, something that they can just forage. That is also something that takes place a lot in terms of rural population. And finally, another statistic that really comes to mind is 48% of rural students complete secondary school, meaning there's a massive dropout. It's where are these 52% going? Do they go on to high school? Do they go on to Thailand or urban areas? They're definitely not staying in the rural areas. Or if they are, what are they doing? So we chose to focus on those and look at sort of education and environmental sustainability, and then maybe add a focus of social enterprise. And so how do we get there? So we are in Cambodia, we're right in the north. You can see this little dot, and it's close to the Thai border. It's a place that we are, in the past few years become more and more familiar with. And we've had, all these supporters that have kind of funded our work and believed in us and led us to be here now for me to share all these updates with you. So our partners are the organizations that kind of give us a better insight of this area. One of them is Entrepreneurship Mekong, that have been in the Mekong region since 1958. They've sort of seen it through all sorts of political unrest and rehabilitation. Sorry. And they've also, sorry, I've just been interrupted. They've also given us a good idea of how the local area is. And one of the main things is that they noticed their academic institutions was unable to follow on students that drop out. They might go on to Thailand. Where do they go? And they instigated us to come and sort of see how we could work in the rural areas, which is through them we connected with CEDO, which is a community-based organization established in Samrong, the region that we work in. And they were the key kind of refugee rehabilitation organization. They re-established villages in this area. And this area was a primary Khmer root stronghold. So it really needed a lot of reinvestment in the late 90s and early 2000s. So we worked with them and we designed a pilot project to be rolled out in the schools and education centers of Entrepreneurship Mekong. We set up Westwell Gardens. We did lots of training for young people to really try out, is that a model that works? Is that something that kids are interested in? What techniques do they like? More practical work, more classroom-based teaching. And we understood that there's lots of other transferable values, such as working in teams. They learn to be more responsible, doing timekeeping, and knowing that 5 a.m. they might water the plants before they go off to school. And also getting an understanding of food waste and food security. And finally, it's skills that they can take back home. We did intense sort of monitoring and evaluation of the work, doing lots of focus groups with these students. And it was a nice small cohort that we could work with for about a year. We also did rice farming with them, which is 5-hectare land close to the EDM center that was purchased by Green Shoots, and all the rice that was grown was for the students. They also got involved in upkeep from time to time and sort of seeing how a rice field can be managed. It's much more hard work to involve young people in it. So we definitely knew that Westwell Gardens is the way to go. And it allowed us to sort of really scale up our work to form the agriculture skills in public school projects. So this was now in 2014. So we've kind of zipped through sort of a year and a half of running a Westwell Garden project and monitoring it, evaluating it, and then coming up with a strategy of what to do next and how to work with. So we primarily worked with government-run schools. It sort of formed stage 1 of our FASE initiative. And we sort of planned sort of a much longer strategy that was coming under this. And the aim was to work with government-run schools in this province of Udaminche in the north, and working with primary schools, secondary schools, and training teachers to how to manage a Westwell Garden. Each school appointed a school garden facilitator that was going to look after the space and also train the kids on a regular basis. And you needed to appoint that person who could take ownership of the space, who would attend sort of refresher courses, but also take part in data collection, because one of the things that's so important to Green Shoots is measuring our impact and seeing where a problem lies. So collecting data on an annual basis, monthly basis is very important to us. And so then these school garden facilitators continue to train students, and you had secondary school students and also primary school students get involved. Some of the offshoots of this was a lot of the students began to establish their own home gardens. And that was such a great positive influence. They had this, if they had the space, they would sort of grow vegetables, share those results with their teachers, and that would come back to us as well. And they would either do it for home consumption or perhaps selling. That was up to them. And they also, a lot of schools, when they had very established gardens, they would reinvest back in the schools. Some of them set up hand washing stations, which is pretty great, especially in a time like this when there's COVID and you need to wash your hands all the time. Others reinvested back into their vegetable garden. They might have improved their pond, had a better water connection. Like just buying a pipe is good enough. So to give you an idea, each vegetable garden sort of can make up to $50 US by selling the vegetables that they were growing, which doesn't sound like a lot to us, but just to keep maintaining the space, it's enough. You can buy your seeds, you can buy the little few things that you need. But a lot of schools also chose to consume the vegetables in their space. They would have they were part of the World Food Program, which meant that meals needed to be provided. And most of them were either canned goods, but now they could have fresh vegetables. And then, so this is now 2017, where we did lots of focus group discussions. We'd had 3-4 years of running an agricultural skills in public school projects. We could get these group of students together and kind of ask them how they feel, like what difference do they think it has been made in their life, and what are their aspirations next? How many of them really still want to work in rural areas? It was a great moment to see and kind of collect together and assess, did we really kind of reach what we set out to reach? And it was really interesting. One of the key things that I really noticed was the variation of responses. The more rural you went, there's a lot of schools which were still kind of town schools because they came from the more affluent sort of town center. But then the more north you went and the more rural the places got, the more the variation in responses and their understanding of what it means to have a background in agriculture and how much do they want to work in it, which really kind of made us realize that we take it a very sort of singular approach. We did the same thing in every school, but the impacts were still so different. So there's no reason that if we did the same thing again, would we get those results if we went to 40 other schools in the same area? Is that the strategy that we want to have? And actually, we came to our second initiative of FASE, which is now 2018 onwards. And the decision that we took was, it's better to have a space of our own, which is a training space. And we take the same approach with everybody. And then it turns into sort of their own space. They can go and create a vegetable garden of their own, from which it sits in line with their needs. And so we found a location, which is, so this is the town that we work in. So a few roads, a massive pond, or lake rather. And it's close to the market. And this was a land that we were shown by the local government. And we obviously didn't have the funds to purchase it. We probably we are not interested in purchasing land there. But what we did was we were sort of loaned it or provided use of it by the local government, which I think was an excellent sort of initiative by them. They'd seen the work that we've done for the last 4 years, working in 42 government schools, investing in the ponds there, making them better. And so it was offered to us by the government on a 20-year lease. I think we've used about 4 years of it. And it's 4 kilometers from the town. It's got 5 villages in close proximity. It's close to water sources and other farmers. And those were all attributes that made it exciting, because these are essentially the people that we can influence, the people that we can start reaching out to. And this is the place that we went, and we sort of tried to sit and do lots of consultations with the community and our local partner on what is it that we want out of this space. We definitely want to do lots of vocational training. We need storage, we need experimentation plots. We want it to be a demonstration site, because that's that's the place, that's the way that you can entice people to make a difference. And we wanted to be very situated within the village, and potentially become a social enterprise, which is written into our strategy. And with that, we went to our partners, Square and Partners, and we sort of had meetings with them. They're an architect firm based in Brixton, and we sort of build a team around it. So there was obviously us and our local partner, and then Square and Partners got involved in terms of design, and we connected with the Building Trust, which is based in Cambodia, but it's also UK registered. So there was legitimacy, and Bureau Happold Engineering came on board to help us with the design. And it very much looked like we're going to go and make something in Cambodia, and we're going to construct this, and how can we make it sustainable, and how can we make it so it's in line with what the local construction looks like. Lots of design and sort of design process took place for over, nearly 6-7 months, where either it's way too high in terms of budget, or it might not really fit with the materials that we have. We had Ed, who might be on the call, I'm not sure. He was out there like trying to understand what is the most economical way that you can make this, where it doesn't stick out, and it's sort of in line with sort of eco credentials as well. This is what we are left with. This is the site, I would say about 2 years ago. It looks pretty much the same, more green. And it's made entirely using earth bricks. So wherever we dug ponds, we created blocks to make the building. It uses bamboo, it's got a metal frame, but everything else is completely sustainable, and it's completely local. Everything mostly came from a few kind of kilometers radius. And this is the site layout. So it's probably much needs to be updated, but most of these green patches are growing spaces. This is also a growing space. We have compost areas, we have ponds. So these 3 ponds are wherever we dug to create a pond. We used that earth to make our blocks to build the structure. And this is nicely laid out paths. A lot of our design kind of thinking comes from permaculture. We sort of looked at how the space would be used and how it could be multi-purpose, which sits in line with the way Green Shoots wants to work. There's lots of fields locally nearby. There's a community pond. So it's all sort of sitting really well. And here is the data classroom. A few people on the call have visited us, and hopefully this can kind of refresh their memories about how the space is. We have a great mural here from Square and Partners again. And we've got these lovely mats, which are locally handcrafted, which can be used as screen. And we've got, this is the earth plot shelter, which is where all the blocks were made, and we continue to make blocks. We have an eco toilet with a biodigester. So we've got a biogas system on site, which allows us to make compost, but also use all our waste in an or rather get rid of all our waste in an eco-friendly way. We definitely didn't want a septic tank in the middle of a rural area. And what we also get is clean cooking gas, so which is ideal if you're growing lots of food, you can just cook it right there. And we've got chicken house, and we've got sort of vertical growing structure using bamboo again. So it's very interactive, because we knew that kids were going to come, and it's got to hook them in. It's got to be exciting for them. So it's got a great mix of tech and sort of growing. And we did lots of youth activities from the get-go. So even when we were setting up the space, we had, compost making sessions and earth block making. We got them involved in sort of design activities. That's Ed over there, and he sort of got in a few chopsticks or something, and they're kind of designing structures. So getting a real understanding. Lots of community consultations went in the building of the space. We'd visit secondary schools and get people and kids involved in what the space should look like. And it gave us a great idea of what traditional Khmer buildings also look like. And we received lots. So we had a launch in December 2018. And in the build up to that, we received lots of publicity, and we can share the links of these articles with you. A lot of them facilitated by Square and Partners for architectural companies, magazines, and then a few food growing spaces like Permaculture magazine and We're also featured in a Cambodian newspaper, which is quite cool. And finally, in 2019, we were awarded AJ Architecture and 100th anniversary or something award for collaboration of the year, which is, I think, something that was out of, of all the kind of architecture awards you can receive, this was the most fitting, because it was a labor of collaboration. It was like everybody that we can get involved, kind of just give your time, give your skills, and give your sweat to it, because people would, we had volunteers turning up ready to dig and build. And so I think, yes, this was quite a nice sort of end to that whole journey of construction. And then what's next now? Like, how do we grow and how do we make people attend? Because that was just half the work. The real work is when you fill up the space and what do you do with it. So we had lots of community engagement and inviting people to come and visit us, and did lots of outreach to make sure that we have a regular stream of people. And it's not all smooth sailing, we'll be honest. Like, there's lots of challenges, because suddenly we are just this big, massive space. We're probably the largest building in the village now, and we're doing lots of different activities. And that's how our staff is using their time. But we also want to make sure that we have 30 people attending every month, and how do we make sure that they stay if they have all these other things that they want to do. So that's a continuous challenge to make sure that people stick around. But we still did continue to work with all the schools that we used to fund before. So the 42 schools where we had vegetable gardens, those students will come and work here and learn more, and to kind of build our space or take back to their own schools. And through those kind of old relationships, we have their parents visiting, we have their teachers visiting. So I think it's still that bit is still a work in progress. But we still have lots of volunteer involvement. So we have everything from scouts turning up to people coming in doing photography, which is really why I can have all these photos to share with you. And we have business school students that will sort of spend 2 months of their time during the summer holidays, and even some people passing by. So making links with other similar projects has been beneficial, because then it's sort of, we join that circuit where people go to one sort of local project, and then they're like, do you know about that one? And they turn up to ours. So that's been a good way for us to keep going and, really focus on the regenerative aspect of our work. So the top photo is December 2018, when we were sort of doing a launch, and we were calling ourselves this agricultural project, but everything was barren. There was nothing growing. It was all sort of just a construction site. You can just see red earth. And this is November 2019. So just 1 year later, we have lots of kind of vegetables growing everywhere, and structures. We left a lot of trees already, so we have nice shade. But yeah, in just 1 year, we were able to kind of improve the soil, adding all our compost and making sure that, it looks like a place where you want to be. And I definitely want to be here right now. But then COVID hit, and we had to kind of really think about what is it that we do and how do we cope with these things. And we continue to kind of work with as many local organizations as we can. We still did our rice harvest in Enfant Kong. We still have students visiting with their families to harvest, and we provided lots of seedlings to local families, particularly army families who can be quite of low income background. And but now what we're here to really discuss is what's next and what do we do, and all these people on this call, and we'd love to share the updates with you. And so one of the things that we really want to do is kind of look at this roundhouse structure that we've got, which really just right now functions as a toilet block, but it can be so much more. And Tim was in Cambodia with us 2 years ago, and we did this great kind of food event, which was farm to table. We did lots of kind of cooking everything that was available on site. And at that time, we didn't use our biogas, but we have it hooked up there now. So it can be, a kitchen, but we take inspiration from this to first give you another update from us. So we've just recently registered in Cambodia. And we've used this, we've registered as the Green Shoots Resources Organization. And one of the key things that it allows us to do is establish a local team in Samrong, in Cambodia, the place that we are in. We can guide them to sort of be the people that spearhead the Agri-Tech Center. And it's really to risk manage after COVID-19. We've sort of faced setbacks where, local organizations got much weaker, or they might not been able to carry on the vision as promised or as been able to. So having ownership of the space that we've invested so much time and effort in, and not just us, but all the people that are involved. And that list is long, and we thank them sort of every few minutes that we can. And it really allows us to focus on the new developments at the Agri-Tech Center. So having this registration done, it was completed, I would say, a few weeks ago, is sort of something which is a great update to share today on when we celebrate our 10 years. And so this is the inspiration that we get, and this is our roundhouse, which is the completed structure. And we have so many new plans for it, something that, which would sort of add on to all the other kind of businesses and projects that are taking place at the Agri-Tech Center. So we want to do a revamp of it to make it look more like a kitchen space, which can be used for cooking. And sort of, it's excellent for when we have volunteers, but also when we have sort of families coming, and it can make it more of a convivial community aspect to the Agri-Tech Center. One of the things that we want to focus more on is home gardening. So working with female farmers, particularly females that will see, once again, lots of young people move out when, young males rather, once COVID is sort of tapering back and people will have to go back to work in their construction sites and things. So you might find more female-headed households. Let's get ready for them and make sure that they're equipped with home gardening skills to feed their families, be more food secure. And you want to focus on nutrient-dense, nature-friendly farming. So small plots of land, lots of greens, lots of vegetables that are kind of complementary to each other, and using this kitchen space that we create to give more educational information on nutrient density of food. At this point, I also invite you to listen to a podcast that we were recently on, which is on nutrients and hunger in the world. And we really speak more about this approach that we're going to take. And I think Nancy is going to send you the link. So yeah, and then finally, out of all the wonderful updates that I've given you, one of the key things is that we are open for volunteering. Once COVID permits, we will kind of reopen our space, and tomorrow is the day where we really share more details on how volunteering is going to work and what are the activities that people are going to do. But yeah, these are the updates from my side, and we're open to questions. You can share them in the chat, or you can, have you kind of raise your hand and give your comments. But I'll also kind of give John Mark the opportunity to maybe add a bit more in case I've missed something.
I don't think you missed much, Moise.
Are you sure?
Yeah, no, you're good. And I think what your presentation has evidence very clearly is that this has been a labor of love. There's been a lot of love in this project for many years now. The Agri-Tech Center is the materialization of all that love that you have invested, Ed, team, all the volunteers, all the people who got involved in this. And obviously this is in the grand scheme of something that we started already a few years before that, which was this whole FASE program. And FASE stands for Food and Agriculture and Social Entrepreneurship. And when you look at FASE, the concept is what? Is about revitalizing the local economies for the benefits of local communities. It's about promoting a smallholder agriculture that is regenerative, so that contributes to the solution. That is a part of the solution, not part of the problem. And finally, it's about the incubation of social enterprises for the benefit of local communities. And the Agritech Center is, if you want, the culmination of all that. It's all of that together. It's something that is dedicated for the benefit of local communities in Cambodia, in that specific region of Cambodia, and which hopefully should become an ambassador for all these programs and initiatives. And you announced it. We've got now a local registration. So this is really exciting. We are officially a Cambodian NGO. And I'd like to also thank Saran Sang, who's the CEO of Amurize. He's an influential entrepreneur in Cambodia, and has established Amurize as the largest producer of organic rice in Cambodia, and a company that is setting really high standards, and that is including in its model thousands of smallholder farmers. Also, Martin Mandieu of Enfants du Mekong, who has been living in Cambodia for more than 20 years now, and has allowed for thousands and thousands of kids of impoverished local communities to receive not just an education, but a great education, and to be change makers of their own. So, and all the people we've had the chance to be associated with. We also have Yannick of Chamrun, a great microfinance institution that for many years have had a fantastic rural outreach and has delivered to its clients services that other microfinance institutions have not. So, you know, we are really fortunate to have all these people on board, and thank you so much for that. It's been a labor of love, and it's something that can grow. And Munitze gave you the kind of groundbreaking news that we have a local registration. Well, here's another little piece of news that's very fresh. It's just from yesterday. Enfants du Mekong, one of our partners, is very keen, has been very keen actually to work with Green Shoots on a social enterprise that they have established for many years in Cambodia, and it's called Soirée du Mekong, and it's basically silk work. So they're using local workforce to produce beautiful silk work. And here's the groundbreaking news: they want to use the Agritech Center for reviving the silkworm. So this is something we'll look into, because of course, you know, we have chicken, we have frogs, we have trees, we have land, and so next could be silkworm, and it would be reviving that part actually of that specific activity. The reason is currently all their silk, they source it from other countries. And what we want to look into is making sure that the silk is actually produced in Cambodia itself. So it's a very exciting project that we will start looking into, and which would be a fantastic complement to a kind of social entrepreneurship incubation center that the Agritech is aiming to be. And that's enough babbling from me. So I just invite others to step in, join the conversation.
I think what I will do is I'll actually invite Noam, who is here on the call. So he's our local partner that is working with us. And it'd be nice to hear from him, because one of the things that I didn't mention in my presentation, I don't know how I could miss it out, is that COVID has really struck in different ways in Cambodia, where last year the government took a very sort of emergency stance and they closed a lot of educational spaces. They didn't see really a lot of cases. It's only now that the cases are quite high, and I think there is more fear within the communities. But essentially, it's been almost a year of really in lockdown. So students have not really gone to school that much, and they do come and visit our space sporadically, which is great. But there's that formal element of coming and getting regular training or regular education is missing. So maybe Noam can kind of give us a very recent, like real-time update of how things are, and what he feels is the opportunities for youth later on. You have to unmute.
Yes. Hello.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Afternoon from Cambodia. Now it's 6:30 p.m. from Cambodia. Yeah. Yeah. Regarding to the agri-tech center, Green Suit is still running and working now. And one big challenge is the spread of COVID-19. Cambodia in last year, like 2020, is not much outbreak in Cambodia, but just only recently, starting from 20 February this year. So the COVID-19 outbreak has rapidly spread. I can say that in February, we just found only around 500 cases, but until now, today is more than 20,000 cases. Yeah. So, and dead cases raised up to more than 100 cases by today. The government has decided to shut down the school, public school and private school since February. Until now is not reopened yet. Yeah. So the school student was not invited to the center during March, April, and this May. Yeah. Now the company has found the new cases around 400 or 500 cases every day. I did not see that in the coming month or next few months will be better. So what we can do is we try to prepare the agri center is running and planting of more crop. We hope that maybe at the end of we don't know at the end of this year when the crop is more planting and then the school reopen, so we can invite school student more to come. Yeah, come to the center. Yeah, because the situation of COVID is more in Cambodia now, I can say. Yeah, compared to last year 2020. Yeah. Did you hear me well? Because
Yeah, we did. Thank you for sharing that. And I think one thing that you sort of say is it's getting worse, but it's been almost a year of students being in lockdown, or students, young people not really going to school. For example, the main high school in Samrong was a quarantine site for migrants coming back from Thailand. So they were, their school was not functioning as a school. And that really disrupts regular formal education. One of the things that we spoke about yesterday was digital connectivity, and it doesn't exist in the rural areas. So they don't have the chance to kind of access education online. Some of them do, people maybe, coming from different affluent more backgrounds, but the people that we work with, they are coming from quite impoverished backgrounds. And but the one thing that I didn't mention in this presentation, I knew I'd miss out a few things, is we have a partnership with Computer Aid, and we have laptops on the site. And Elizabeth, who's on the call, she brought two of them. And so so we do have connectivity, and I think it would be so great that we continue the tech aspect of the Agri-Tech Center by making sure digital inclusion takes place. And I think the best thing about having the Agri-Tech Center, or this sort of space that we have, is it's multi-purpose. It serves the community and the needs. And I think that one of the main things for us to do is, when we arrive, we are able to go to Cambodia, is understand how the community has changed in the last year. Socially, it's probably evolved in ways because migrants have come back. They've probably kind of faced other hardships, and family structures might have changed. a lot of families locally to us was grandmothers living with kids, with parents working in Phnom Penh. And so now how has that changed, and how do we respond to that from our space? So yeah, please, I'll give you a few moments to maybe ask your questions. Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself. And we're here to also ask, ask for your feedback, because so many of you have been involved in our work from the beginning.
Hello, Monazi.
Hi, Saran.
Yes, yes. Good afternoon, John Smart. I'm very happy today, and thanks for the invitation. I just would like to congratulate for the 10 year for Greenshot.
Thank
It was
you.
4 or 5 years where I met Mr. Jan Mark. He has very good heart. We have been long discussion in Belgium. I like the way you work in Cambodia and enjoying on the way you are doing. Thanks so much for your support for Cambodian people, especially on the poor provinces. As you know, my background, I was in NGO work for 10 years before I changed to private sector in 2012. So I've been all around in the countries. I know some around where you work. So I travel around on 24 province. I know hardship of the people there. So you are right in doing these jobs. And I thank you, Monazai, for your hard work in Cambodia. I know that you've been very high commitment to do this. I can see how you dedicate for our Cambodian people. So this is a very remarkable result that been achieved in a 10 year, and I see you have very clear directions in agri-text. So where we are going to, leapfrog from the poor, we need to go for more technology. Agri-technology is one of the best transformation of the poor Cambodian people. So Cambodian are living in agriculture sector, they are livelihood. So they are, can say the main job is agriculture. So the more they're doing, meaning using it, agri-technology can be improve their productivity, sustainability, and more green in the next, to address climate change all the way. So this is the right things, and I believe that Amurice is been, work along the way more than 7 years after I stop NGO and I go in social project. So Amara actually is a private company, but we are working 70% of our job is engaged with the community. So we have 10,000 community farmers. We have smallholder farmer living on the mountain, minority group. So we are work along with them. So I can say this is good model. So we believe after COVID-19, everyone, are struggling here, the way we work, lockdown, traveling, limitation, that's really constrained. So that's impact to the supply chain.
Yeah.
Of course, the project you are doing is right. We need to go carry on this activity after COVID is under, control. The government is working hard to control the COVID-19 in Phnom Penh, because Phnom Penh is the biggest hotspot. But at the moment in Thailand, is become more hot in Thailand. So more Cambodian migrant workers return to Cambodia. So it become more hotspot in the provinces. So you can see where the project you are located for, there will more and more returning from Thailand. That result in more positive, because in Thailand, there's more case in Cambodia right now. Cambodia, we see on the flat curve where the number is decreased every day. We see some positive way and more vaccination to the workers in the factory, to to reach the number can be herd community in the hot zones where the worker work in industrial zones, where the worker are in manufacturing, garment factory, textile are working. So the government tried to vaccinate all those workers. So like 1 million workers gonna be vaccinated in May. But my concern, because Cambodian workers from Thailand, they need to to be proper quarantined, because can be more spread in the community, because those Thai, they have been exposed to the risk in Thailand, more risk to Cambodian in rural. As you know, our health system in the rural provinces is not really good like in Phnom Penh. So we wish see more under control. I would see our participation from the Cambodian people to quarantine at least 14 days when they return to Cambodia to protect their family. That's what we want to see. So we are in the halfway, because Cambodia economy likely to grow 4% in 2021, because the government try to recover from the COVID-19. So we are see the projection from ADB, from World Bank, all projected 4% GDP. So thanks for the export of the textile, for traveling good and market in United States, they have boosted the purchase. So that create more job for the workers. So yeah, that situation. And yes, finally, I would like to thank Jan and all your colleague team here, your board, for your high commitment to work for, tireless for Cambodian people. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks. We have thank you, Saran, and we look forward to working with you more, because Saran is on the board for our local registration, so he's really been monumental so far. And in case you missed it, he's the founder and CEO of Amru Rice, which is the largest exporter of organic rice. They work with farmers around Cambodia, so having that sort of person behind your organization is pretty great. Thank you, Saran. So we have a raised hand from Varun, so I let him speak.
Hi, thank you, Maniza. Thank you for allowing me to have a question. I hope I'm audible. So to start with, really great to see this presentation. I've been, I think, on most of the events this week, and it has been great to see the work that you guys have been doing. It's really awesome. So I have a question for yourself and John Mark, either one of you. And I'm probably the person who is newest to Green Shoots, so everybody else seems to have been around for a long time. So I probably don't know enough about you, so apologies if this question sounds very naive. But in terms of your Agritech Center, and I think it's a fantastic idea, the fact that you have a component of it which is not just food security but also social entrepreneurship, I think it's a fantastic idea. In a way, and I'm assuming that the way in which you fund the Agritech Center right now continues or would continue to be based on grants, but is there any plans for you to kind of make it self-financing on its own, especially considering, I think, the news that John Mark shared today about having or producing silk on site? So are there plans?
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, there are various initiatives that should be revenue generating, okay? One of them is one in which Maurice had put a lot of work, and that was the volunteering program. Because effectively what you are doing is you are creating opportunities for people from France, from the UK, from the US, from all sorts of, let's say, Western countries to come over and spend 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months working in the center, experiencing something special, connecting with the local communities, and discovering about permaculture, regenerative agriculture, and paying for it. Now, this was a package, if you want, that would include also accommodations and food and so forth. And a portion of that, of those revenues, would go to the charity to make the whole Agritech Center sustainable. Now, of course, with the pandemic and all the travel constraints, this is no longer possible. And that's why, you know, we also had looked at other things. Now, the generation of revenues from local produce, the chicken, the eggs, the frogs, and so forth, this is not enough. Okay, so you know, we are looking also at at other opportunities. And of course, grant funding is still necessary when you provide education. Okay, because we are providing education for free. We are not charging any of the students anything. Okay, and so grant funding is necessary for education. But social enterprises activities, so the incubation of that in the center can be a source of income. And the idea, for instance, with the silkworm, of course, is that this would come with funding that would allow us to look into it, how we could set it up, and fund a substantial part of the fixed costs of the center itself. And there'll be more of these. Yes, we are open to also ideas, suggestions of what could be done. I mean, between Munize and Tim, there's lots of ideas, and we can't always pursue all of them. And sometimes, you know, of course, force majeure events like a global pandemic will shut down some of these ideas, but some will be resurrected when the conditions are right again.
Yeah, and I think for sort of closing, we're at sort of the ending. Tim had to leave, but he left talking about his farm to table kind of idea, which we sort of piloted out. And another thing is, this also allows us to be in this space of ecotourism where, you know, you can have day events and really have that other face for the Agri-Tech Center. There's lots of things happening in the background, which, you know, is training and it's running farm businesses, but there's a front house, which can be weekend trips organized from Siem Reap, where, you know, there are travelers who would be looking for that positive experience in a rural area. And that could also be great for Samrong as a whole, where you can have in a short kind of managed influx of people coming and visiting and seeing certainly a place that I've fallen in love with. So yeah, that is also something that, you know, we can play around with and test it out. We have a hand raised from Tao, so I'd like her to unmute herself and speak.
Hi everyone, I'm Tao, and I did some PhD research for Khmer food medicine, traditional Khmer medicine, so like Tnambarang and all that sort of stuff. And I just wanted to say that I love the project in full. I was really, really happy to see all this progress more in depth, because we've spoken, you know, individually, and I've read the websites and things. But I was just curious about the sort of kitchen space and this kind of fostering of community and commensality between every one of the actors. I was thinking, because of this kind of push from like Cambodian government as well as Chef Ross to kind of discover and really appreciate Khmer gastronomy, and this is part of like my work as well that I really appreciate. I was wondering, in terms of the types of interactions or education for the community actors and people involved, would that include kind of learning how to utilize local vegetables and plants that may not be as widely categorized scientifically? Because I know from my work with Phnom Kulen's botanical key as well, it's still in the process of being collected. So there's lots of like Khmer vegetables that you just have Khmer names for right now, and it's not easily as replicable in restaurants or something unless you're like someone on the staff knows how to eat that, prepare that vegetable. So I was wondering how that would potentially look like, or if that's an idea.
Yeah, in the short answer is yes, but I think one of the things is, and this sort of came about when me and Sarin, who's one of our staff, was sitting and just translating vegetable names for each other. And I realized that there's a whole list of names that was vegetables that I'd never heard of, definitely never seen in the market, but they existed. And you're sort of walking around on site, and little kids just know what leaf to eat and what berry is okay. And I loved that. And I really try not to look at it from this Western perspective, but the idea is there's a wealth of knowledge that already exists. And it's not the food that's being sold in the market, but it's part of their culture. So we would definitely kind of house that or incubate that and try to, you know, create a space where you are at least giving a nod that, you know, this exists, let's preserve this knowledge, because the only way that, we can kind of go forward is to make sure that the local knowledge is kind of given attention to, and there's already that it exists, that wealth of information. So we're not walking in and saying grow cauliflower and grow this and grow that. We're saying what can be grown in this environment, which looks at the growing conditions and make sure we can replicate them. And so yeah, so the short answer is yes, we will be looking at much. And I think from you, I'll be trying to connect more with these botanical kind of research houses, which in the past I've not been able to, because I think, as we spoke, a lot of the information is in French because it's historical, or the research doesn't just exist. So having that connection with you has been great. Another hand raised is Elizabeth, so I'll let her speak.
Hi, everyone. So first, thank you very much for the presentation. It was really useful and really, really good to see all this new stuff happening. I like the silk idea. I like the local registration and having Saran on board. This is really an energetic dynamic. Now, my question is always, always look at the future. I mean, I know there's lots to do, and especially with the slowdown that we've experienced this year. I mean, we have to just recover from this and get started again. So maybe some of my questions are a little bit too far-fetched, but it's really about, again, listening to Saran was very useful for me. Is really about, are we looking at in the medium term to longer term at creating more partnerships and sort of replicating what we are experiencing in Samran to potentially other provinces of a similar style? Is this something we've been talking about? Is it something that we could draw some knowledge from Saran, if I can just piggyback on this experience, or is it not at all relevant yet?
I will begin. And yes, so we are looking at other organizations that exist. We've definitely had that initial partnership or association with them where they would just kind of share volunteers with us. So we had other kind of similar organic farms in a province next to us. Unfortunately, they had to close down, but that initial relationship in terms of knowledge sharing had been created. So, but I think there is more avenues. I think one of the main things, and you and I have also discussed, is being a bit more influential in the local area and casting a wider net about who comes to get trained with us and then goes off and creates a space of their own. And the curriculum comes from us, the way to work comes from us. So yeah, making that network is definitely handy. It's definitely useful, and it also sort of puts us a bit more on the map. And then it also goes back to this multi-purpose aspect of the Agri-Tech Center, where we are certifying people to work and create action in a specific way, and we reap the benefits of it too, be it regenerative practice or in the future maybe kind of voluntary carbon credits. The opportunities are endless, but I think paving the way now and doing it in that structured way, and yeah. Does that answer your question?
Maybe if I can add to that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth, and I don't know actually it's by way of culture or nature or whatever, but I tend to be a little bit conservative in the sense that I don't like leverage too much. And when Munize and I, we kind of designed the FASE program and so forth, we always wanted to move really slowly and testing things. So that's why we started with a pilot. And after 18 months, when the pilot was successful, then we went on to something larger, which was the ASPUS project. And then when that was successful, then we went on to the phase 2, which was the Agri-Tech. So we are proceeding step by step. Okay. And in the past, I've had the chance to participate to initiatives from other organizations, and they were much faster in their approach. And sometimes I had the impression that they started running before they could even walk. And on the one hand, I was fascinated by the ambition, and the objectives they were setting, but I was also kind of scared by the leverage that it all took. And as long as the money comes in, it's okay. But as we all know, when you have a very leveraged initiative, if the flow of money is not coming in, it could collapse. And we stand for sustainability first and foremost, and that means That's why, you know, we are probably growing slower than we should or than we could, but we want to last longer. And you know, this is very important for us. We don't want all this love, all that sweat that got invested in to be wasted because all of a sudden, you know, we can no longer afford it. So we really want to proceed step by step and be careful.
Yeah.
But we understand that it's just part of many other initiatives, and that's why we like working with other people, because then we can have some leverage through the networking.
But do you see an opportunity to sort of replicate, not necessarily leverage yourself and grow bigger, but be involved or in sort of creating, you know, satellites or replicating the agri-center expertise, so that other local communities in other provinces sort of get on the same journey?
You're absolutely right, Elizabeth, and even in other countries, because we had an interest from one of our partners in Vietnam. Okay, and so that could be another opportunity. Now, of course, now we have also, we have to be pragmatic, you know, we can't travel anywhere. I mean, we can't even leave the UK. So, and sometimes we can't even leave London. So we have to be pragmatic about these things. But yes, definitely. And, you know, it's something we can look into. And it's not just that, because as you know, Green Shoot is about building bridges between various things. And what we also thinking is that these agri-tech center, you could also have medical care provided in the long term, because that's what we do. And we could combine both our programs about medical care, medical training, and sustainable agriculture. Everything is linked. When you have, you know, Saran told us about the issues about COVID. When you have healthy people, they can work, they can provide for their families, they can make the whole community thrive and prosper. So it's all linked.
Yeah. And Mini was on the call for most of it, and she's just left. But I think this is one thing that she would have liked to hear, where this idea of, you know, let's do a crossover where we take our healthcare work and bring it at the Agri-Tech Center. And I think finally, so we can wrap up. Oh, Ollie has a question, Ollie, or a comment to make. Unmute. Nancy, can you unmute him?
Ollie is one of our trustees.
Yeah, sorry, I've just managed to unmute. Sorry.
Great.
As I was clicking on the wrong one. I'm very excited about the Silk idea, and can I have a bit more feedback on the partnership? I understand it's very early stage, but who's going to do the training? How do you grow silkworms? Don't you need trees and that kind of stuff? And also, how do you, what's the partnership going to be like? Is it going to be 50-50? What's the time scale? Is that going to be a new source of income? I was selling the silk to children of the Mekong, or how is that all going to work? Do we need more buildings, built by Squire partners and all that? All that sounds very exciting, but we haven't got much information about all this, or is it just too new?
It's very new. Basically, it's based on a conversation from yesterday. But the great news is that the funding is already earmarked. Okay, so we know we already have some funding, and that funding should go first to a feasibility study. Okay, and again, as I said, we tend to be cautious, maybe a little bit too conservative, but we should start with that. So a feasibility study, really look into it, how we could do it. The objective is to produce silk locally for these scarves. Enfants du Mekong has fantastic partnership with the French luxury industry that can pay for it. What we really want to showcase is the fantastic skills of the local tisserands.
And I think the training would be from them, and they would house it, and we would definitely need new structures. So unfortunately, Tim has left the call, but he would be called upon very soon. But yeah, we will need the space for it. So something would be probably constructed. And the idea is that we are facilitating the training. So it's a new skill to add on to all the other ones at the Agri-Tech Center, and it's looking more into rural development. So I think if nobody has questions, I will sort of end the call. Otherwise, I mean, I'm sure we can speak on and on, but I'd like to, sort of personally say that, yes, I do this work. I've been doing this work for the past 7 years, but I really do like it. And it's been great to kind of share all that with you today. And, my first involvement, some of you might know, some of you might not, was in 2012 when I first went and sort of did an assessment of the pilot that we did with Orthon de Mekong. That's my first sort of mission that was organized by Green Shoes. I'm sorry, my entire family has come on the call today. That was just my brother that came in.
It's okay, we all know them anyway, so
yeah.
Bring them in.
No, I think that's enough for today, but there is a question from RP, and he's definitely talking more about the silk stuff. So I'll park that for now because we would not know, but I'll copy it. But anyway, thank you all for being here today. And I'm really glad that I could share all these updates with you. And there is a session tomorrow, which is focusing a lot more on volunteering. And, if somebody wants to volunteer for silk production, then they should definitely join tomorrow. But yeah, it's going to be the same time, the same call links. If you've had fun today, then please do come tomorrow. And finally, we are also doing match fundraising this whole month. And it's sort of up to £6,000 are being matched by one of our donors. So please share that link with your friends and network and everybody else. So thank you all for today, and hopefully see you tomorrow.
And thank you to all our friends from Asia who joined us.
Thank you. Yes.
For them. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Munizar. Thanks, Shoma.
Stay safe. Bye.